I graduated high school with the 1.6 GPA, not a 2.68, a 1.68. And during that final week of my senior year, I was expelled. Now, the expulsion was eventually reduced to a suspension, and I received my diploma. But if I had lined up every teacher I ever had and asked them which student would someday earn a bachelor's degree with honors and later complete a master's, I don't think many of them would have picked me. To be fair, neither would I. And that's what I want to talk to you about today, because this isn't really a story about college. It's a story about identity, a story about stories we tell ourselves. And it's a story about what can happen when someone believes in you before you fully learn to believe in yourself. See, when I was younger, nobody would have described me as an academic, not even close. I wasn't the kid with straight A's. I wasn't the kid talking about university. I wasn't the kid reading books for fun. Honestly, I hated reading. I hated writing too. School was just something I survived, not something that I enjoyed. What I was good at was figuring things out, making things happen, finding answers, finding people, finding solutions. And because of that, family members would often come to me when they needed something. If they were trying to get something done, somehow I could usually find a way to do it. At the time, I wore that as a badge of honor. I thought it meant people respected me, and maybe they did. But looking back, I think there was something deeper going on. You see, on the streets, being that guy who could get things done, that carries a lot of weight. It's a type of credibility. And people, they know your name. People know you can solve problems. People know you have connections. But deep down, I knew something. I knew some of those skills weren't being used in their best ways. I knew that the image I was building wasn't necessarily the man that I wanted to become. I wasn't a bad kid, but I wasn't exactly on a path that pointed towards graduate school either. If you had asked me whether I'd someday earn a master's degree, I would have laughed. Not because I lacked confidence, but because the idea was ridiculous. College just wasn't for people like me. At least that's what I believed. And beliefs are powerful things, especially the wrong ones. So after high school, I bounced around. Like a lot of young people who don't have a clear direction, I dabbled in community college. I started classes, then quit. Started again, quit again. Over and over, I repeated that cycle. If I'm being honest, I lost count. I wasn't failing. I wasn't getting kicked out of school. I just simply wasn't committed. And that's the important distinction. A lot of people think failure happens when you fall down. Sometimes failure happens when you never stay in one place long enough to find out what you're capable of. And that was me, always moving, chasing the next thing, always convincing myself that I'd come back to it later. Eventually, I enrolled at National University. And I want to be careful here because my perspective back then is very different from what it is today. You see, at the time, part of me felt like I was taking a shortcut, like somehow I was cheating, like it wasn't a real university. Now today, my perspective's completely different. I don't believe that for 1 second, but at the time I did. And because I didn't fully believe in what I was doing, as you can imagine, I eventually quit there too. A year and a half later, gone. Just like that. Another unfinished chapter in my life. Another thing that I started and walked away from. Another piece of evidence supporting the story that I kept telling myself, that maybe I wasn't college material after all. Then life happened. I started my career at AT&T. I found out for the first time that I was good at something. I was genuinely good, and that was sales. I worked hard at it. I advanced. I learned. I grew. As I started moving up the ladder, I kept hearing the same message. If you want to move up in this company, you're going to need your degree. You know, whether that's completely true or not isn't really the point. The point is that I believed it. And for the first time in my life, I wanted something enough to pursue it. So that summer, I enrolled in classes at Arizona State University. And something interesting happened. I passed. Not barely, not by luck. I actually studied hard, and I earned a 3.0. And for the first time, I started thinking dangerous thoughts. Maybe I could actually do this. Maybe college wasn't reserved for some other group of people. Maybe I belonged there too. So the summer ended, Fall registration opened. I walked in ready to continue, excited, hopeful, confident. Then I was told something I wasn't expecting. You aren't admitted. I still remember that feeling. It was like a gut punch. Apparently, anybody could take summer classes, but fall enrollment required actual admission to the college, and I had not been admitted. Just like that, every old story came rushing back into my head. See, you're not college material. See, you don't belong here. See, this was never meant for you. Looking back, I think every one of us has moments like that. Moments where life presents evidence that confirms our worst beliefs about ourselves. And in those moments, we usually have two choices: accept the story or challenge it. For whatever reason that day, I chose to challenge it. I found the Dean of Admissions email address, and I wrote her a letter. Not an angry one, not a demanding one, just an honest one. I explained who I was. I explained what I was trying to do, and I explained why this mattered to me. And then I waited. A few days later, I received a response, not from the dean herself, but from her assistant. And I'll never forget what he wrote. He told me that he saw a lot of himself in me. Think about that for a second. A complete stranger, someone who had every reason to say no, someone who owed me absolutely nothing. He read my letter and saw something worth betting on. Then he told me he was going to put his neck on the line and admit me. I can still see that email. I can still remember where I was. I could still remember how I felt. If I'm being honest, my eyes welled with tears. Not because I got into ASU, but because for the first time, someone I didn't know believed I could become something more than I had been. And that changed everything. That day, I made a promise. Not to the university, not to my employer, not even to my family. I made a promise to that man, the man who put his reputation on the line for someone he had never met. I wasn't going to let him down. The journey wasn't easy. It took 6 years. 6 years of working, 6 years of studying, 6 years of balancing responsibilities, 6 years of choosing not to quit. And eventually, something happened that would have sounded impossible to that kid with this 1.6 GPA. I graduated with honors. Even saying those words today feels strange because I know where I started. I know the mistakes that I made. I know the doubts, and I know the version of me that thought college wasn't possible. After graduation, I found that email again, the one I saved all those years, and I replied. I asked him if he remembered me, and he did. I thanked him again, and I told him that I was graduating with honors. I wanted him to know that his gamble paid off. I wanted him to know that his belief mattered. I wanted him to know that the one email changed the course of a life. And that's the interesting part. After my bachelor's degree, I did something even more ridiculous. I earned my master's, an MFA in writing popular fiction. Remember the guy who hated reading, the guy who hated writing, the guy who never thought college was possible? That guy ended up writing a novel, completing a thesis manuscript, and earning a graduate degree. Not because he was smarter than everyone else, not because he had some special gift, because somewhere along the way, he stopped believing the old story. And that's the lesson. No college, no GPA, no honors, just identity, a different one. The older I get, the less interested I am in where someone earns their degree. I generally don't care. National University, University of Phoenix, State University, wherever. Just get it, earn it, finish it. My brother-in-law, he became a teacher through National University. Sometimes he questions when we chat whether the legitimacy of his degree. I always tell him the same thing. The students he helped don't care where his diploma hangs from. The hundreds of children whose lives that he's changed don't care what logo's on the building. The degree did exactly what it's supposed to do. It transformed his life. And because of that, he transformed the lives of many. That's worth something. That's what education does when it's done right. It changes you, not because of the paper, but because of the process. You learn to think differently, research differently, solve problems differently, persevere differently. You discover strengths you didn't even know that existed. I know I did, and I credit much of the man that I became to that journey. So let me leave you with this. There's a version of yourself you're still carrying around. Maybe it was created by a teacher, maybe a parent, maybe by mistake, maybe by a failure, maybe by something someone said 20 years ago that you still believe today. And maybe that version of you has been deciding what you're capable of ever since. The kid that had a 1.6 GPA would have never believed he'd earn a master's degree. The man sitting here today is grateful that he was wrong. Maybe you're wrong about yourself too. What's the story that you've been telling yourself about who you are? And what if it isn't true anymore? My name is Mario. This is Unfinished, and I'll see you in the next one.